Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. My wife always said I missed the little things in life. She meant the way sunlight hit the kitchen tile in the morning, or how the flowers by the mailbox were starting to bloom crooked again. I always thought that was just her poetic way of saying she wanted me to notice her more. And maybe she was right. Not in the way she meant it, but in the way a person is right by accident, like stepping backward into winning the lottery or falling face first into a grave. Because the little things are what destroy you in the end. Not one big explosion. Just tiny cracks spreading quietly until the wall collapses on its own. I didn't see the cracks at first. Nobody does. Love is a hell of a dimmer switch. You get used to the dark so gradually that you start calling it normal. We moved to this town 2 years ago. Small enough that everybody remembers your license plate. Big enough that no one waves at you in the grocery store unless they need gossip. I run a little auto repair shop at the edge of town. Nothing fancy. 4 lifts, 2 bays. I know everyone's truck better than I know their kids' names. My wife, Lily, works at the hospital administration office. Desk job, calls, schedules, paperwork. The kind of job where nobody should be emotionally invested, yet somehow everyone is. I used to pick her up for lunch sometimes. One day they had a potluck, and I watched her walk across the lobby holding a tray of brownies, laughing at something one of the nurses said. Her head was tilted back a little, eyes crinkled the way they do when she's really laughing. It hit me in the stomach, how much I loved her. Not in some dramatic movie way. Just a quiet, oh, that's mine. She used to look at me like that too. Used to. Most of this began slowly enough that if someone asked me when exactly we stopped being us, I wouldn't know where to point. Maybe it was when she started going to the gym after work. Just to blow off steam, she said. Maybe it was when she joined a running group on Saturdays. Helps me stay motivated, she said. Maybe it was when she started sleeping with her phone under her pillow. It's just easier, she said. It always starts with just. Just is a word that hides knives. She still kissed me goodnight every night, just softer. She still laughed at my jokes, just a little delayed. She still curled her feet under mine in bed, just less often. I told myself none of it mattered. People change, marriage changes, love matures. That was the official story I narrated to myself, so I didn't have to feel the dread crawling under my ribs. But the truth was simpler. Someone else was entering her life, and I was quietly being escorted out. I first met him without even knowing it. I'd gone to her running group's end-of-summer barbecue. I remember because I brought ribs, and everyone acted like I had delivered the Ark of the Covenant. Lily introduced him casually. This is Mark. He helps lead some of the longer routes. Tall, athletic. That easy, friendly charm men get when they know they're good-looking and don't have to try very hard. He shook my hand with both of his, like we were old friends. I remember he smelled like cologne and dryer sheets. People like that always smell like effort disguised as effortlessness. He was polite. That was the worst part. If he had been rude, arrogant, loud, anything obvious, I could have hated him immediately. But no, he was warm. He complimented my ribs, told me he'd heard about my shop, said he'd bring his truck in sometime. I smiled like an idiot. Because when a man is stealing your wife, the first stage is always hospitality. For months, there was nothing anyone could point at. No lipstick smears, no missing nights, no dramatic lies, just a shift in gravitational pull. Once, she got home from the gym and she was glowing. Not sweaty glowing, not workout glowing. The kind of glowing a woman gets when she feels seen. I kissed her cheek and tasted mint gum. She never chewed gum before workouts. The little things. Another time, she laughed too hard at a text. I asked what was funny. She said, just something from work. but her thumb hovered over the lock button too fast. The little things. One morning, she left her phone on the counter. Not unusual. She trusts me. Or she trusted my blindness. A preview banner popped up, just a name. M. No message visible. For some reason, my stomach tightened. I didn't touch the phone, didn't unlock it, didn't scroll. I just stood there, staring at that single letter, one initial, one signal flare. I told myself I was overreacting. I told myself nobody ever ruined a marriage by ignoring something that felt wrong, which is the biggest lie I have ever told myself. Eventually, the first real crack appeared. It was a Tuesday night. Cold. We were eating leftover pasta. She was scrolling her phone while pretending not to. I was doing the same, but I didn't pretend as well. I asked casually, like a man stepping lightly onto a frozen lake, "How was work?" She said, "Fine." And then, without any reason, without any transition, she added, "You know I love you, right?" Just like that. Out of nowhere. And I felt fear. Not love. Fear. Because nobody says that unless they're already picturing the conversation where they don't. I nodded. I know. But something inside me took a step back. That night, she showered before bed. When she came out, her hair wrapped in a towel, I watched her move around the room. There was a stillness in her, a distance that wasn't there before. Not a wall, a door. And she was standing on the other side of it. I wanted to ask her to come back, but I didn't know how to say, "I miss you," without sounding pathetic. The little things. Over time, I trained myself to listen differently. I listened to pauses, to the silences between sentences, to the spaces where her affection used to live. Once, as we lay in bed, I heard her breathing shift, the kind of breath someone takes when they're thinking of something they can't say. I waited. She stayed silent. I said quietly, "Are you happy?" She didn't answer. I didn't ask again. The next morning, she made coffee and smiled at me like everything was fine. And I smiled back, because people don't leave all at once. They fade, disappear grain by grain, until one day there's more absence than presence. The town didn't help. Everyone here watches everyone. The same 3 restaurants, the same Saturday farmers market, the same gym where she just liked the classes. I didn't want to be the jealous husband, the pathetic one, the one who checks phones, the one who begs. I have pride, and pride is just fear in a suit. So I did nothing. I waited for the big sign, the obvious proof, the undeniable blow. And when it came, it was not dramatic. It was not cinematic. It was not even spoken. It was a look. We were lying in bed, just before sleep. She thought I was already out. I opened my eyes. I saw her looking at her phone and smiling. That smile. The one she used to save for me. The one that meant I was her favorite place to exist. And she wasn't smiling at me. I closed my eyes, and something in me died so quietly that even I didn't hear it go. The next morning, nothing changed. I made coffee. She kissed my cheek. I went to work. The shop was slow. I replaced brakes on a Ford, changed oil in a Subaru, rotated tires on a Chevy, normal things, mundane things, safe things. But the silence inside me had weight now. I didn't cry, didn't get angry, didn't confront. I just watched the pieces fall into place. I watched my marriage loosen its grip like a hand opening slowly underwater. And I waited. Because I knew, with the kind of certainty that comes from dread so deep, it feels like wisdom. The moment she asked me to trust her again would be the moment I stopped being the man she remembered, and the man I became was already waking up. If anyone had asked me then whether I was okay, I would have said yes. That's the thing about slow destruction. It doesn't feel like collapsing. It feels like adjusting. You don't notice how much you've bent until you can't remember standing straight. A few days after that silent smile in the dark moment, she started leaving home earlier. Just to get in a longer warm-up, she said. Sure, that made sense. People committed to exercise always find extra hours by subtracting them from their spouse. The first real shift happened on a Wednesday. She was already gone when I woke up. Not unusual, not alarming, but she had forgotten her lunch and her favorite insulated bottle, an item she treated like a limb. She once drove back home from the dentist to get it, so I figured I'd bring it by her office, thought it would be a nice gesture. Husband points scored. I walked into the hospital administration building. The receptionist smiled with recognition. I'd been there enough times to be familiar, but not suspicious. I took the elevator up, nodding at people who pretended they didn't see me. Offices with glass walls, soft lighting, generic art that tries to whisper professionalism, but mostly says, IKEA had a sale. Her office door was slightly ajar. I heard voices, not heated, soft, almost tender. I froze, not dramatically, not like a movie, but like prey in the woods scenting something it doesn't want to see. Her voice was light, high, like she was trying to sound breezy. His voice, warm, familiar. Mark, the runner. Of course, I didn't push the door open. I'm not a fool. Knowledge without evidence is just paranoia. So I stepped back and pretended to have just arrived. I knocked, loud enough to disrupt whatever mood was in there. Her chair squeaked, footsteps, and she opened the door. Her smile when she saw me flickered. Not a full change. Just a millisecond of oh. Not joy. Not even surprise. Just inconvenience. I held up her bottle. You forgot this. She exhaled a laugh, placing her hand on her chest like a sitcom character trying to look flattered. Oh my God, thank you. I didn't even notice. Behind her, I heard his chair shift. I didn't look. Not because I didn't want to. Because I knew that if I saw his face, even just a flash of guilt or territorial confidence, something inside me would break too loud to hide. I'll see you at home, I said. Yeah, she said. Too quick, too practiced. I walked out. My heart didn't pound. My breath didn't quicken. I didn't feel rage. I felt clarity. Everyone thinks betrayal feels like fire. It doesn't. It feels like cold. The kind that settles behind your ribs and waits. That night, she was unusually affectionate. Made my favorite dinner. Poured my drink for me. Sat close. These things sound sweet to people who have not been betrayed. To those who have, they are worse than distance. They are performance. She kept touching my hand during dinner, laughing too loudly, asking too many questions. I watched her like I was studying an animal in the wild. Not maliciously, not yet, just observantly. She said, "You're quiet." I said, "Just tired," which was true, just not in the way she thought. She kissed me later. She initiated. I didn't resist. I also didn't lean in. You learn eventually how to become still while being touched. The body participates. The soul steps aside. She fell asleep quickly. I didn't. The next few days followed the same script. I'd wake up. She'd be gone. I'd go to work, fix cars, come home. We'd have dinner, smile, kiss, sleep, silence. A routine is a good coffin. Then came Saturday. She had her running group. I had paperwork at the shop. At least that's what I said. I parked across from the gym, windows tinted, engine off, watching. I didn't hide because I was ashamed. I hid because I wanted truth without stage lighting. Her car arrived, not alone. His car pulled in seconds later. They didn't touch, didn't look at each other too obviously. Professionals at secrecy. Professionals are the hardest to break. They jogged off down the trail behind the gym. I waited. A trail loop takes 47 minutes. 49 if you're talking and trying to look like you're not. They came back 56 minutes later. That's when she reached for him. Not in a romantic way, just a light touch on his forearm. A tiny thing. A little thing. The kind that said, "We have a world they can't see." My breath stayed steady. My hands did not shake. I felt nothing. Which is worse than pain. Pain means you can still feel. Numbness means the world has already ended, and you're still in it. That night, she sat beside me on the couch. Her head leaned barely against my shoulder. I realized then that this was the first time she had initiated closeness without distraction in weeks. I didn't move. She whispered, "I'm glad we have each other." I said, "Me too." Lies aren't always spoken. Sometimes they're disguised as truths spoken from the wrong heart. A week later, the first real fracture in the story appeared. She came home late, not late like 6 p.m. instead of 5:30, late like 10:47 p.m. She walked in holding her shoes, hair damp from a shower taken elsewhere. She froze when she saw me still awake on the couch. "Oh, I thought you'd be asleep." "Clearly," I said. She laughed awkwardly. "We grabbed dinner after the run. Everyone went. I didn't realize the time." She had already taken her wedding ring off for running. She had not put it back on. Again, the little things. I didn't argue, didn't question, didn't accuse, just, "Long run?" She nodded. "Longer than usual." And she left it at that. She went to bed. I sat in the quiet. I didn't think. I didn't need to. Everything was already understood. There are different kinds of grief. Some are loud, some are still. Mine was the still kind. A month passed. My silence didn't stop anything. It didn't encourage anything either. I wasn't being passive. I was observing. Pain teaches patience. Then one morning, she sat at the table and stared at her coffee like she was trying to decode it. She said my name softly. I looked up. "I have something to tell you." She was crying before the words even formed. That's how you know the truth is not something that wants to exist. It has to be dragged out, choking. "I'm pregnant." There was a ringing in my ears, not shock, just acknowledgement. I nodded. "Okay." She waited for something, anything, anger, joy, fear, a question. I gave her nothing, because what she needed from me was direction, and the direction I gave was silence. She took my hands. Hers were trembling. "This is good, right?" I looked at her, really looked. Her eyes searched mine for the version of me she remembered, the one who loved her openly, the one who took her face in his hands and kissed her forehead. That man was gone. I had buried him without ceremony. I said, "If you say so." She blinked. Confusion. A crack in her rehearsed expression. She whispered, "I thought you'd be happy." I said, "Why?" She pulled her hands back slowly. She looked down at her coffee, and then, there it was. The mistake, the slip, the ruin. "The timing just might be a little off." She stopped. Too late. The sentence was already alive. My stillness grew teeth. I didn't ask what she meant. I didn't ask how. I didn't ask who. I just nodded. "Okay." She looked up. Tears spilled. "We can get through this," I said, "if you say so." She broke, covered her face with her hands, shoulders shaking. I sat there, watching her crumble. There is no pleasure in someone you love falling apart. But there is truth. Truth is cold. Truth doesn't hold you when you cry. I didn't touch her, didn't speak, didn't comfort, because comfort is a promise. And I had no promises left to give. Eventually she whispered, "I'm scared." I said, "I know." She didn't look up. She said very quietly, "Please don't leave me." That was the moment something in me hardened into something irreversible. Not anger, not revenge, certainty. I stood up. I kissed the top of her head, soft, gentle, final. Then I said, "I won't leave." Which was the truest thing I'd said in months. I would stay, I would be calm, I would be warm, I would be everything she remembered, and she would never see it coming, because this wasn't the end. It was the beginning. The moment she realized she was scared. That was the moment I stopped being the man who loved her, and became the man she should have feared. Pregnancy changes the way a house sounds. The air gets heavier. The silences get longer. The future becomes a ghost that walks ahead of every conversation. For the next few weeks, she behaved like someone carrying glass. Gentle, cautious, and terrified of any sudden movement. Not physically, emotionally. She moved around me like I was a fragile thing that might shatter if handled incorrectly. It was almost tender in a tragic sort of way. She started waking up earlier, sitting at the table in the dark before sunrise, hands wrapped around her mug like a child holding a secret. I would sit across from her, not speaking. She'd glance at me like she expected something. I don't know what. Anger, maybe, or forgiveness. Or maybe she expected me to ask the question she was praying I wouldn't ask. Who is the Father? I didn't ask. Not because I didn't want to know, but because I already knew. Asking would only give her the illusion of control, the illusion that her answer mattered. It didn't. The truth was living between us now, breathing its own slow, cold breath. She tried to fix things in small ways, made dinner more often, cleaned with unnecessary enthusiasm, bought my favorite chips, started texting me during the day again, little check-ins, jokes, a picture of a dog she saw on the sidewalk. I responded politely, warm but distant. I wasn't trying to punish her. I was simply not in the same world anymore. She was living in the story where the marriage could be salvaged. I was living in the story where I was taking notes. And then, one evening, I came home to find her sitting on the couch, holding a printed list. I recognized it immediately. Baby names. She had been waiting, hopeful, determined, fragile. "We should talk about names," she said softly. Her hands shook just barely. I sat down across from her, not beside her. "Okay," I said. Her relief was visible. She took a breath, ready to step into the fantasy of our child, our future, our family. "I always liked the name Andrew," she said. I nodded. I didn't respond. She waited. "Do you have any names you like?" I looked at her, calm, even, kind, even. "No," she swallowed. Hard. Her eyes went glossy, not from sadness, fear. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. She just nodded and folded the list in half slowly, carefully, like folding a flag at a funeral. We didn't talk about it again. 2 weeks passed. The doctor said the pregnancy was healthy. She started wearing looser sweaters. I watched her avoid mirrors. I watched her avoid her reflection in my eyes. She didn't reach for me in bed anymore. Not because she didn't want to, because she didn't know who I was now. One morning, she said she was going to visit her sister for the weekend. I nodded. "Drive safe." That was the last normal sentence we ever exchanged. Saturday evening. I was fixing the hinge on the bathroom cabinet when my phone buzzed. Her name. A text. I wiped my hands, picked up the phone, read the message, then read it again. "I've been thinking, I'm keeping the baby, but I'm putting his name on the birth certificate. It'll just be easier. There are certain moments in life where everything inside you goes silent. Not numb, not shocked, just silent, a complete cessation of internal movement." I stared at the message. No shaking, no anger, no heartbreak, just quiet. Then I typed exactly one word. "Okay." I put the phone down. I finished fixing the hinge. I put the tools away. I made coffee. I stood in the middle of the kitchen and let stillness settle into my bones like dust on old furniture. After an hour, I opened my laptop, logged into the rental management portal, terminated the lease at the end of the month, paid the penalty without hesitation. Then I forwarded her text to him and to his wife. Then I ordered a gift basket, a tasteful one, neutral colors, no sarcasm, no malice, just sincerity sharpened into a blade. The card said, "Congratulations on fatherhood. From all of us." The basket was delivered to his house before noon the next day. His wife opened it. Of course she did. Wives always open the packages. I don't know what happened immediately after she read the card. But I know what happened an hour later, because my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Silence. Then breathing. Then an exhale that sounded like something breaking quietly in someone's chest. A woman's voice. Low. Controlled. Thank you, she said. Not sarcasm. Gratitude. Dark, heavy, exhausted gratitude. You're welcome, I replied. She hung up. And that was that. The following evening, Lily came home early. She walked in fast, keys still in her hand, hair stuck to her temples like she'd been sweating or crying or running, maybe all three. Her eyes were wide, unfocused. She didn't close the door behind her. Why? She whispered, not accusing, not angry, just lost. I looked at her. You asked for easier. Her mouth trembled. She stepped closer. You don't understand what's happening. I tilted my head. I understand exactly what's happening. She closed her eyes, pressing her palms to her face like she could hide inside her own hands. She called me, she choked. She called me, and she screamed, and she cried, and she said... She stopped, couldn't speak. I waited. Silence is a leash when used correctly. She dropped her hands and looked at me, and there it was, pure fear. They're breaking up, she whispered. She kicked him out. I nodded once. Yes. Her voice cracked. I didn't want this. You did, I said. You just didn't think it would cost anything. She collapsed into a chair like her knees gave up. She wasn't crying. That was the impressive part. She was holding herself together with thread and desperation. Please, she whispered. Please, can we just talk about this? I sat across from her, calm, steady, quiet. Talk, I said. She opened her mouth, closed it, tried again. I don't know how it happened. I didn't mean... Stop, I said gently. Don't lie. Not to me. Not now. She swallowed hard. I watched her struggle. Truth is heavy wood. Most people don't have the strength to lift it. But she tried. I miss the way I used to feel, she said finally. With him, I felt like I was still... me. I nodded. Not judgmental, just acknowledging. And with me? She looked at me like a prisoner being asked to confess. With you, I felt... seen, known, safe. But not exciting, I finished. Her silence was the admission. You wanted to be new again, I said. Not loved, not understood, just new. She covered her mouth, eyes wide, because it was true, not cruel, just true. She whispered, I never stopped loving you. I nodded. Love isn't the issue. She blinked at me, confused, afraid of what that meant. The issue, I continued, is that you thought love would forgive you before you asked. We sat in silence, a long one, a lifetime one. Finally, she whispered, What happens now? I stood, walked to the door, closed it gently, locked it. Not threatening, just deliberate. I turned back to her. Now, I said, you understand that I am not leaving. Her breath hitched, not relief, dread. I will stay. I will be kind. I will be steady. I will be everything you remember. I walked closer, slowly, calm. And every day, you will wake up next to me, eat with me, sleep beside me, breathe the same air as me. She trembled. But you will never again be sure what I'm thinking. I leaned down, close, not touching. And that, I whispered, is the life you chose. Her eyes filled. Not with tears, with realization. I walked away, turned off the kitchen light. The house fell into shadow. This was not revenge. Not yet. This was the foundation. Because the worst punishment is not losing someone. It's being allowed to keep them, while knowing they remember who they were before they broke themselves. Life didn't change all at once. That's the part no one tells you about the aftermath. The world doesn't erupt. Buildings don't shake. People don't gasp in the streets. The sun rises. Dogs bark. The mail comes. The neighbor waves while dragging out the trash. The world continues exactly the same, and the only difference is you're no longer inside of it. You're standing beside it, watching it move without you. After the text, after the gift basket, after the phone call I overheard through the wall, where she tried to explain herself to the sister who no longer trusted her, things looked normal. But normal had become theater. She still cooked dinner. I still fixed the squeaky cabinet door. We still paid bills, shared a bed, exchanged routines. But now, every silence had weight. She watched me constantly, like a person who'd seen a wolf in the tree line but didn't know where it was now. She asked gently, carefully, almost nightly, "How was work?" I answered politely, "Quiet." Which was the truth. Not peaceful. Quiet. The wrong kind of quiet. The kind that says something is listening. A week later, I got a call from a mutual friend. Not a close friend, someone who floated around the edges of everyone's lives. He cleared his throat before speaking. Everyone clears their throat when they're calling to discuss someone else's sins. "Hey man," he said. "I just wanted to say, I heard about everything. I'm sorry." "There's nothing to be sorry about," I said. Calm. Things are exactly how they're supposed to be. He didn't know how to respond. People rarely do when you refuse to perform grief the way they expect. Word spreads, especially in a small town dressed up to look bigger than it is. People didn't ask questions. They just watched. They waited to see if I would explode. They didn't understand that my silence was not shock. It was direction. The first public test came 2 Saturdays later. The running group was meeting at the lake trail. As always. Routine, familiarity. Predictability is a gift when you're hunting. She asked me that morning softly, "Do you mind if I go?" I looked at her. "Why would I?" She flinched, just a little. "I just wanted to be respectful." "Go run," I said. "You have every right to go where you like." She nodded. Relief and dread tangled together in her expression. She left. I waited. I didn't follow her immediately. There's no power in chasing. There's only power in being there first. I drove to the lake, parked on the far side of the lot, near the tree line, not hidden, just quiet, present. The morning was cold, the kind that bites the lungs and turns breath white. I leaned against my truck, arms crossed, watching the path head. Eventually, they appeared. The group. Bright jackets, running shoes tapping pavement in rhythm. He was beside her. Of course he was. They weren't touching. They weren't talking. They weren't even looking at each other. Which made it obvious. When two people try that hard to look like nothing is happening, everything is happening. They slowed to a stop near the benches. Stretching, laughing. Someone made a joke. People scattered to water bottles and car trunks. She saw me first. Her face froze. Not shock, recognition of inevitability. He saw me second. He stopped mid-step. Not fear, not guilt, just a flicker of calculation. The look men give when they're trying to decide whether they're taller than the situation. I pushed off the truck. Walked toward him. No rush, just steps. Even, controlled. The ground felt steady. My breathing was calm. My hands were loose. The group fell quiet one by one, silence crawling outward like a ripple. He squared his shoulders, tried to look grounded. "Look," he started. "This is—" I lifted my hand. Not to hit him, just to stop him. And he stopped, because some gestures speak louder than words. "Walk with me," I said. It wasn't a request. His jaw twitched, but he followed. We passed between trees, out of sight but not out of earshot. I didn't raise my voice, I didn't lean in, I didn't threaten. I just looked at him the way you look at something you have already decided the meaning of. "You don't need to explain anything," I said. His shoulders dropped the way they do when a man mistakes mercy for safety. "I know everything." He nodded. His breath fogged in the cold. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen." "Of course you did," I said. He blinked. "What?" You don't accidentally pursue a married woman. You don't accidentally resurrect an old flame. You don't accidentally climb into someone else's life and start rearranging the furniture. You meant to, you wanted to, and you enjoyed it. He swallowed. I could see the pulse in his throat. But she... Don't say her name. He shut his mouth. Here is what you need to understand, I said. I'm not asking for anything. I don't want to fight. I don't need an explanation. I'm not here to take back what was mine. I stepped closer, inches away, calm, still. I am here so that you know exactly what I look like when I am not done. His eyes flickered. There it was, the instinctive recognition of danger without visible threat. I leaned in slightly, my voice barely above breath. You are not being punished for what you took. You are being punished for what you thought it made you. He opened his mouth to speak. I didn't let him. My hand moved faster than his thought. Not a punch to the face. Too dramatic. Too visible. I hit him once, open palm, just below the sternum. A body shot. Precise. Controlled. The kind that knocks the breath out of a man so completely he forgets how lungs work. He collapsed to one knee, choking on air, eyes wide and wet. I crouched, not touching him, just watching his body try to remember how to breathe. I want you to keep living, I said quietly. I want you to wake up every morning knowing I exist. His eyes lifted to mine. Panic. Real panic, not fear of violence, fear of consequence, fear of inevitability. I stood and stepped back. Get up. It took him a full 30 seconds to stand. When he did, he didn't look at me like a rival. He looked at me like something he could not understand and didn't want to meet again. Good. He walked back first. I followed. She was standing near the benches, hands clasped in front of her like a child waiting for punishment. When he reached her, she whispered something. He shook his head. Didn't speak. Didn't touch her. Just kept walking. The group pretended not to watch. Pretending is a universal language. I stopped in front of her. She didn't speak. Her breathing was too shallow, her eyes too wide. I said quietly, "You should go home." She nodded. I turned, walked back to the truck, drove away. No triumph, no satisfaction, just certainty. This was the beginning. Because destroying a person doesn't start with breaking them. It starts with letting them see themselves clearly for the first time. She had wanted a new life, a new version of herself, a new story. Now she would get one, and she would hate it. I wasn't done, not even close. But I had made something clear. I did not need revenge to hurt her. I only needed to let her live with the truth. And the truth was already eating her alive. The real pain hadn't begun yet. It would. Slowly. Quietly. And she would feel every second of it. And I would be right there. Calm. Present. Loving, even. Because the worst kind of punishment is delivered by the person who still holds your hand while you drown. After the lake, things didn't fall apart all at once. Collapse rarely happens in a single moment. It happens in the spaces between other things, in the pauses, the glances, the conversations that should have meant nothing but suddenly carry weight that wasn't there before. People in town didn't ask questions directly. They just adjusted. Like birds shifting before a storm they can't see but can feel in their bones. I was still polite at the grocery store, still nodded at the neighbors, still held the door open for strangers. No one could say I was angry or broken or vengeful. I was simply present. And present was enough to unsettle everyone who had ever taken my presence for granted. Lily, on the other hand, started shrinking. Not physically. Emotionally. Her shoulders rounded. She walked quickly through rooms instead of moving comfortably in them. She spoke softly, cautiously, always watching my face for signs she couldn't read anymore. She kept trying to fix things with gestures, dinner, compliments, touch. But you can't rebuild something when the foundation was dug up and replaced while you slept. The first public crack came at the hospital. It always happens there. Places with tile floors and fluorescent light have no patience for secrets. I stopped by to drop off lunch, hers this time. Not out of affection, out of consistency. Predictability is a mirror. It lets people see themselves. I walked into the lobby, same receptionist, same sterile smell. I knocked on her office door. She opened it too fast, too eager, relieved. "You brought lunch," she said, smiling a fraction too wide. Her co-workers glanced from their desks, pretending not to watch. She invited me in. I sat in the chair across from her desk. She unpacked the meal with hands that wanted to shake, but didn't. "Thank you," she said softly. "You didn't have to." "I know," I said. She faltered. The conversation wanted to grow there, but I didn't feed it. Her co-worker, Jenna, came in with paperwork, saw us, smiled tightly. "Hey," she said. To me, "Haven't seen you around in a while." "I've been busy," I said, calm, even. She nodded. That pause, that beat, the one where people decide how polite to be with the person holding the truth. "We've all heard," she began. Lily froze. I watched her freeze. "That's something you can't fake." "Heard what?" I asked, not defensive, just curious. Jenna hesitated, reset her smile, the professional kind. "Just rumors." "Rumors usually start somewhere," I said, still calm, still polite. She swallowed. "About the running group and Mark." The room felt small. Lily's breath hitched almost silently. I didn't look at her. I looked at Jenna. Rumors only matter when people deny them. Jenna waited for a reaction, for a tell, for a crack. I gave her none. "Have a good day," I said. And I left. I didn't raise my voice, didn't show hurt, didn't explain. And because of that, every person in that office believed the worst. People don't trust calm. They trust outrage. Outrage means someone cares. Calm means someone knows. When Lily came home that night, she moved like she was walking barefoot on broken glass. Quiet. Careful. "It's starting," she whispered. I didn't ask what she meant. She sat across from me at the table. The kitchen light above her flickered like it was choosing sides. She finally said, "I never wanted to hurt you." I nodded once. She kept talking, because guilt hates silence. I didn't think it would go this far. "It always goes this far," I said. She went pale, because she knew that was the truth most people never say aloud. Affairs don't ruin marriages. The lies you tell yourself to live with them do. That night, she cried quietly in the bathroom with the shower running. I didn't listen. I didn't comfort. I didn't move. I just lay in bed staring at the ceiling, knowing the crying wasn't about loss. It was about consequences. A few days later came the first real public collision. A Saturday. Farmers' market. In towns like ours, markets aren't about produce. They're about surveillance. I walked beside her, not holding her hand, not avoiding it, just walking, existing. People parted around us like we were a storm cell they hoped would pass without touching them. And then, of course, he was there. Mark, standing near a honey vendor, alone, no running group, no casual athletic glow. He looked thinner, tired, like someone who hadn't slept in days. His eyes flicked to me, then to her, then back to me. She froze. He froze. The vendor kept talking about wildflower blends like the world hadn't just cracked open. I stepped forward first. Always step first. It removes doubt. "Morning," I said. He swallowed. "Morning." Lily didn't speak. Her breath was so shallow I could barely see her chest move. I asked, "How's your wife?" His face cracked. Subtle, just a muscle at the corner of his jaw. "She's with her sister." "Good," I said. "Family is important." The words stayed calm, gentle, but they landed like a blade being set on a table between us. He opened his mouth, a half-formed apology, excuse, plea. I didn't let it form. You should keep your distance from her now, I said. Not for my sake, for yours. His face tightened. I'm not afraid of you. I smiled. Not wide, a small thing, precise. You already are. He didn't respond, because denying fear is proof of fear. I turned. Lily followed because she didn't have a choice. The market watched us the way people watch a lit fuse. We made it nearly to the exit before she stopped walking. Her voice came out small. Do you want me to leave him alone? I looked at her slowly. You already did. The sentence hit her like an open-hand strike. Quiet, precise, devastating. Because love wasn't the weapon she thought she was holding. Guilt was. And guilt belongs to the one who remembers the moment they stopped being who they meant to be. After that, her world began to shrink. Friends stopped calling. The running group continued, but sideways glances replaced laughter. People who once hugged her now nodded stiffly across distance. She started staying home more, cleaning things that weren't dirty, rearranging cabinets at midnight, folding laundry that didn't need folding. She was trying to create order in a life that had lost structure. One evening, she stood at the sink washing a single dish long after it was clean. I came up behind her, not touching, just nearby. She didn't startle. She was past startle. They look at me like I'm poison, she whispered. I didn't respond, because I didn't need to. Do you enjoy this? She asked. Her voice cracked on the last word. I looked at her reflection in the window, her shoulders drawn tight, like wires pulled too far. No, I said. Calm. This isn't enjoyment. She turned, tears brimming. Then what is it? I stepped closer, not threatening, not angry, just present. This is consequences. Her face collapsed, not into sobbing, not into wailing, just into understanding. The understanding that the world doesn't always punish with force. Sometimes the world punishes by simply letting what is true be seen, but understanding doesn't mean acceptance. She tried, after that. Truly tried. Small apologies slipped into conversations where they didn't fit. I shouldn't have stayed late. I should have seen what I was risking. I know I hurt you. Each one was a pebble tossed into a void. I didn't respond to any of them, not because I didn't hear, but because apologies are gifts people give themselves, not the person they harmed. The first true public unraveling happened at the grocery store. Late evening, fluorescent aisles, cold air, the place where dignity goes to die. We were turning into the baking aisle when we ran into his wife. Her eyes met Lily's instantly. No hesitation, no confusion. Just two soldiers recognizing each other across a battlefield made of choices. Time stretched thin. The aisle felt too narrow. His wife spoke first. Not loud, not emotional, just steady. You took everything from me. Lily's breath hitched. I never wanted to. Liar, the woman said. No shout, no insult, just the truth spoken plainly, which is the sharpest form of violence. People nearby froze, not looking, but listening. I remained still, present, witness. Lily whispered, I'm sorry. The woman laughed, a sound with no joy. You're sorry now that you lost. Lily's tears spilled, not dramatic, not desperate, just quiet, helpless. The aisle held its breath, and then the woman stepped closer, just one step, and said, with a softness that could cut a bone clean in half, I hope every morning you wake up for the rest of your life, you remember that you weren't choosing love, you were choosing attention. She walked away. No scene, no screaming. Just a clean, surgical exit. Lily stood there, shaking. People pretended to compare brands of flour like they weren't watching her entire identity snap. I picked up the bag of sugar we had come for. Ready? I asked. She nodded, tears running down her face, catching in the collar of her coat. We walked out silently. No comforting hand, no shared glance, no togetherness. When we got home, she sat on the edge of the bed and asked a question so small I almost didn't hear it. Am I a bad person? I sat in the chair near the window, not facing her. No, I said. You're just a person who chose yourself at the expense of someone who loved you. She let out a broken sound, a sob that wasn't about pain, but about clarity. That night, she didn't sleep. I didn't either. We lay in the same bed, separated by inches and lifetimes. This is how punishment works, when you don't swing the hammer yourself. You let the weight of what they did collapse on them, slowly, completely, and with no escape. She had wanted to be seen, wanted to be exciting again, wanted to remember some younger, wilder version of herself. Now she was seen, just not how she imagined. And I stayed, calm, warm, steady, the one thing she could not escape. Because leaving her would have been mercy, and mercy was never what she chose for me. Winter came early that year, not with snow, just with cold. The kind that settles into the walls and makes a house feel like a museum of things that used to be warm. The days shortened. The lighting inside our home started to feel dimmer, even when all the lamps were on. Or maybe it was her. Maybe it was the way she moved now, always aware of herself, of how others might be looking, thinking, judging. Shame has a physical weight. It pulls people inward, shrinks the shoulders, hollows the eyes, slows the breath. Lily was carrying more than the pregnancy now. She was carrying the knowledge of who she had become. And the thing about self-awareness is that once you have it, you don't get to go back. You don't get to unknow yourself. She tried to fill the quiet. She tried to apologize without apologizing, tried to heal wounds she couldn't bring herself to look at directly. She started leaving notes, on the coffee table, by the sink, on my nightstand, not dramatic confessions, just attempts at gentle re-entry. I appreciate you. Thank you for dinner. I liked the way you talked to the mailman today. Sentences that meant nothing, or maybe they meant everything. But meaning is useless when the foundation is already ash. I didn't confront the notes. I didn't throw them away. I didn't respond to them. I simply let them accumulate, like evidence. She also started doing more around the house, cleaning things that didn't need cleaning, organizing drawers no one opened, rearranging furniture that had already settled perfectly into place. She was trying to create newness, a reset, a way of rewriting the timeline in her own head. But the thing she didn't understand was this. A home doesn't become new just because you move the couch. A home becomes new only when the people inside it do, and neither of us were new. One night, she came into the bedroom while I was reading. She stood in the doorway for a full minute before speaking. Do you ever think we could be us again? I didn't look up. We are us, I said. She blinked. No. You know what I mean. I closed the book, set it evenly on the nightstand, looked at her, really looked. The thing you want, I said, is not the thing you had. She swallowed hard. I want you. No, I said gently. You want the version of yourself that existed when you were with me. Her eyes filled, but she didn't cry. She was beyond crying as reaction. Now tears came only when truth broke through her denial like light through a crack. She stepped further into the room. I don't know how to be that person again, she whispered. You can't, I said. She closed her eyes. For a moment, I thought she'd fall, but she stayed standing. Then what am I now? She asked. I didn't answer, because that was her question to answer, not mine. She left the room. Quiet, slow. I didn't watch her go. I didn't need to. The next day, the calls started, from her mother, her sister, a friend who never liked me. People reaching out to her like she was the victim. Or maybe they thought she was. People always sympathize with the one who cries, not the one who stands still. But the tone shifted quickly once they spoke to her. I could hear the confusion in their voices when she tried to explain. She couldn't frame herself as the wounded party, not convincingly, not when the facts were so simple, not when everyone in town already knew. I didn't involve myself. I didn't correct anyone. I didn't defend her. I simply existed, calm, predictable, present, and presence is a pressure greater than any raised voice. A week later, I found her sitting on the floor of the nursery that had once been a theoretical dream. Now it was a room with neatly folded baby clothes and an empty crib we picked out long before any of this. She was sitting cross-legged in the middle of the room, holding a tiny onesie, not crying, just looking at it like she didn't recognize it, or herself. I leaned on the doorframe. She didn't turn. "Do you want to know if it's a boy or a girl?" she asked softly. "No," I said. She nodded once, set the onesie down. I thought finding out would make things feel real. "Things are real," I said. She let out a laugh, humorless and thin. "Not in the way that helps." I didn't respond. She looked around the room. "I don't know how to be a mother like this." I walked in, stood behind her, not touching her. "Then don't be this," I said. She closed her eyes, because it was unbearable in its simplicity. People think advice must be complicated to matter. It doesn't. Truth is usually only one sentence long. She didn't say anything else. I left her there. A few days after that, I got a text from Mark. Short. "We need to talk." I didn't respond. Another came. "Please." I didn't respond. On the third, he asked, "Can we meet somewhere neutral?" I finally replied, "The gym." After close. He agreed in seconds. Of course he did. Men like him think closure is an achievement they can earn if they just speak the right words. He didn't understand that closure is not something I needed. It was something he did, and I had no intention of giving it to him. The gym was nearly empty when I arrived. Rubber floors, echoed breathing, the faint smell of sweat that never really leaves. He was pacing when I walked in. He stopped when he saw me. "Thank you for coming," he said. I nodded. Not acknowledgement, permission. He took that like a blessing. "I just need to say..." "No," I said. He blinked. "No? You don't need to say anything. You need to listen." He swallowed. Hard. I walked past him into the training area, stopped in the center of the mats. He followed, hesitant. "You think the worst part of all this," I said, "is that you lost her?" He frowned. "I didn't..." I lifted my hand and he stopped. The silence in the room was deep, heavy. "The worst part," I continued, "is that you didn't lose her." He stared, confused, afraid of the meaning. "She is going to spend the rest of her life remembering that you were the person she destroyed herself for, and that you were not worth it." His face changed, slowly. The way a man looks when he is finally seeing the fire he lit, reflected back on the building he lives in. "I didn't mean to ruin her life," he said quietly. "Yes," I said, "you did." He shook his head, weakly, without conviction. I stepped closer, not aggressive, just deliberate. "You didn't just take something that was mine. You took something from her. You took the version of herself she liked, the one she trusted, the one she thought she could forgive." He closed his eyes, because he knew. He did. I leaned in, voice low. "That is who she will never get back." He opened his eyes slowly, and for the first time, I saw it. Real fear, not of me, but of himself. I stepped back. "There's nothing left to discuss," I said. "Your punishment is that you have to keep being you." I turned. He didn't try to stop me, didn't call after me, didn't move. He just stood there, in the middle of the mats, looking at the shape of the life he'd carved out of arrogance and carelessness. I left the gym. The air outside was cold enough to sting my teeth when I breathed. When I walked into the house, she was waiting on the couch, sitting upright, eyes swollen. She looked like someone who had been preparing for a conversation she didn't know how to begin. Did you see him? She asked. I nodded. Did you hurt him? Not in the way you mean, I said. She let out a breath that shivered on the way out. I sat across from her. Same positions as always. Same distance. Same stillness. Except now the room felt smaller. What happens now? She asked. It wasn't a question of marriage, or forgiveness, or future. It was a question of identity, of consequence, of cost. I rested my hands on my knees, calm, steady. Now, I said, you learn how to live in the world you made. Her chest rose slowly, fell slowly. She nodded, once, and then again. Not acceptance, recognition. And recognition is the beginning of suffering. She didn't cry. Not this time. She didn't collapse. Not this time. She just sat there, silent, breathing, understanding. That's when I knew. The real punishment was already underway. And it would be slow, and it would be thorough, and it would be hers, and I would be there, not as her comfort, not as her enemy, as the witness. Because the worst thing in the world is not being hated. It is being seen clearly by the person you hurt, and having no place to hide from yourself. I stepped into the kitchen. The storm pressed against the house, the wind rising and falling like something breathing. The trees outside scraped the siding with long, tired fingers. The smell of rain clung to the air, thick and metallic, like the world was holding its breath. She clutched the edge of the counter with one hand, the other still resting on her stomach. Her knuckles were white, her pupils wide. Fear, yes. But not fear of me, fear of herself, fear of what she finally couldn't hide from. I don't know how to talk to you anymore, she whispered. You never did, I said. She closed her eyes, took that in. Let it hit her the way truth hits, slow first, then deep. I tried, she said, voice cracking. I really tried. No, I said. You tried to keep the version of yourself that made you feel wanted, not the version that could be trusted. Her breath stuttered. I know. She finally took a drink of the water. The glass clinked against her teeth. She looked exhausted, not physically, existentially. I miss us, she said. We don't exist anymore, I replied. Just the shadow of what we were. She swallowed. Then what are we now? I leaned against the opposite counter. The distance between us wasn't far, but it was endless. We're two people living with the consequences of one choice, I said. That's all. She let out a quiet, broken laugh. You say it like it's simple. It is, I said. Simple doesn't mean painless. The thunder broke above us again. The light flickered twice, then steadied. The refrigerator clicked on and hummed beside us, the most ordinary sound in the world in the middle of something that was not ordinary at all. She set the glass down. It wasn't empty. Neither of us moved toward it. I don't want to be this person anymore, she said, her voice small. This version of me, the one who destroyed everything good in her life. Then stop being her, I said. It's not that easy. No, I said. But it's possible. Impossible things happen slowly, one painful decision at a time. She stared at me for a long time. Her breathing was uneven. Her hand tightened against her stomach again. I keep thinking, she whispered, that if I could just show you, if you could just see how sorry I am. I do see it, I said. It just doesn't change anything. Her eyes filled, but she didn't cry. Not yet. You still love me, she said, almost accusing. I didn't deny it. Yes, I said. But love is not a door you can walk back through. It's a room we burned. The ash is still there, but the house is gone. She covered her mouth with her hand. The first sound finally broke through her chest, half sob, half breath. You were the only safe place I ever had, she said. I know, I replied. That's why it's gone. You didn't know how to keep it. Silence absorbed us again, heavy, dense, the kind that rearranges the bones inside a person. She turned away slightly, shoulders shaking. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen," she whispered. "You didn't plan it," I said. "But you allowed it. You watered it. You protected the lie. That's the part that ruined us, not the act, the devotion you gave to hiding it." She sobbed once, then again. The quiet tears resurfaced, the kind soaked in shame, not pain. She turned to the window. Rain streaked down the glass like the house itself was crying. The reflection that looked back at her wasn't the same person who had once stood there smiling in sunlight. She looked smaller, fragile, human. "What happens when the baby comes?" she asked again. Same question as before. But now it meant something different. Now it wasn't fear of losing me. It was fear of being seen by someone who didn't know how to hide yet. "We raise the child," I said simply. "Together, separately, from the same roof or from different places, but we do it without lies." She nodded slowly, absorbing that. "I want to be someone our child can look at," she said. "Then stop asking me to tell you how," I said. "Start doing the things that hurt to do." She wiped her face. "Like what?" she asked. "Like sitting in the guilt instead of running from it," I said. "Like telling the truth even when it makes you feel exposed. Like apologizing without expecting forgiveness. Like letting consequences shape you." Her hands shook again. "I'm scared." "You're supposed to be," I said. "Fear means you're looking at the truth instead of away from it." She leaned back against the counter, breathing unsteady and shallow. The storm roared again, the house creaked, the wind howled, the power flickered and held. We stayed like that for a long time, neither speaking, just existing in the same room, with the same history, at the same threshold. Finally, she whispered, "Do you think we'll ever be okay?" I didn't rush the answer. "No," I said, "not in the way you mean, but we can be something honest, and honest is better than okay." She nodded slowly, a painful acceptance, but a real one. She walked past me, moving toward the hallway, not running, not breaking, just moving. When she reached the doorway, she paused without turning back. "Thank you," she whispered, not for mercy, for truth. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. She went upstairs. I heard her steps pause halfway, then continue. The bedroom door didn't close this time. It stayed open, trust broken, making one last attempt at being seen without collapsing. I stayed in the kitchen. I poured the cold coffee out. I washed the mug. I dried it. I placed it back where it always belonged. Sometimes healing looks like habit. Sometimes survival looks like repetition. Sometimes the deepest transformations happen quietly, in the rooms where no one is watching. The storm outside finally began to break. The wind softened, the rain slowed, the house breathed, and I stood there in the half-light, neither forgiven nor forgiving, neither whole nor shattered, not loving, but not empty, simply aware. She was right about one thing. We were both haunted. But hauntings only exist when two things remain in the same place: the past and the one who remembers it. The storm kept pushing its weight against the walls like it wanted to tear the house apart from the outside, while the silence tried to do the same from within. She slid down the cabinet slowly, her hands shaking as she lowered herself onto the tile again. She wrapped her arms around herself like she was trying to hold her ribs together. The crying wasn't loud anymore. It had gone past volume into something quieter and more dangerous. The kind that comes when a person has reached the end of excuses. After a while, she managed, "I don't know how to live with the person I was." "You don't," I said. "That person is gone." She blinked hard, like she was trying to swallow something thick in her throat. "Then who am I now?" "That's the part you have to figure out," I said. "Without me telling you, without anyone holding your hand." Her fingers dug into her upper arms. You used to be so gentle. I used to believe you, I said. The lightning flickered across her face, showing grief in its purest shape. No drama, no plea, no performance. Just loss, real loss. Loss not of me, but of the version of herself she had once been proud to look at in the mirror. She whispered, I think I hate myself. You don't, I said. Not yet. If you did, you'd be fighting for something different. You'd be tearing out the rot by its roots. Right now, you just miss who you got to pretend to be. She pressed her forehead to her knees. I don't know how to be better. No one does, I said. You learn. The slow way, the ugly way, the way that feels like dying without dying. She cried again. Not for me. For the version of herself she killed. The storm outside eased, just barely. The thunder faded to a distant rumble, like a warning instead of a threat. The rain softened into steady tapping against the windows, patient, tired. She lifted her head, eyes hollow. When did you stop loving me? I thought about that. Not the first obvious moment, not the discovery, not the confrontation. Those were explosions. The end came in silence. The day I realized you were capable of lying to me while loving me, I said. That's when love changed shape. What shape is it now? She asked. I held her gaze without blinking. A memory. She looked like she had been struck, not physically, existentially, because memories can be cherished, but you can't live inside them. She exhaled sharply, her breath catching on its way out. So that's it. We're just ghosts in the same house. No, I said. Ghosts don't feel guilt. The kitchen clock ticked loudly, counting seconds neither of us knew how to use. She looked up at me again, something desperate returning to her eyes. A last ember, a last act of denial. What if I change, she said. Really change. Not just apologize, not just cry, not just regret. What if I rebuild myself piece by piece? What if I become someone you could trust again? I didn't look away. That's not something I ever see, I said. But it's something you should do anyway. For you? She whispered. No, I said. For the child. For the world. For yourself. If you change to get something back, it isn't change. It's negotiation. Something in her collapsed when I said that. Not her posture, her illusions. She stared at the floor, shoulders trembling. I don't want to go through this alone. You won't be alone, I said. You'll just be without me. The words didn't echo. They settled. She whispered, What's the difference? A person who stands beside you, I said, and a person who saves you are not the same. Her breathing shook again. Then what are we now? We are what's left, I said. Her tears slowed. Not dried, just slowed. Like the body was tired of grief and turning it into something quieter. Fatigue. Understanding. Surrender. She wiped her face on her sleeve. When the baby comes, will we talk? Or will we just pass the child back and forth like strangers? I leaned back against the counter. We'll talk, I said. But not about us. About what matters. Will it hurt? She asked. Yes, I said. For a long time. She nodded. I deserve that. That's not why it's happening, I said. Pain isn't punishment. It's education. She laughed once, a broken exhale. Do you hear yourself? Yes. And you believe it? Yes. She swallowed. And you don't hate me? No, I said. Hate would be a comfort. Hate would give me something to burn. Instead, I have clarity. She stood slowly again, legs shaking under her. The house wasn't dark anymore. It wasn't light either. It was bare. Like the structure of everything had been stripped to studs. She walked past me, moving toward the stairs. Halfway up, she stopped and turned. Her voice was thin, fragile, threadbare. Will you leave eventually? I didn't blink. Yes. Her lip shook. When? When staying no longer teaches either of us anything. She nodded, understanding in a way she hadn't before. Not acceptance. Understanding. There is a difference. She continued up the stairs, one hand on the wall for balance, the other over her stomach, like she was shielding something the world hadn't touched yet. The bedroom door closed softly, not slammed, not forced, closed like a confession. I stood there in the quiet, the storm moving away in slow increments, the house resettling into itself. I poured the cold coffee down the drain. The water swallowed it without resistance. The clock kept ticking. The house remained standing. And I realized something else. Pain isn't the end of love. Indifference is. And I was already there. The storm hammered the roof, relentless. The rain didn't fall. It assaulted. Like the sky itself was trying to clean something it couldn't name. She didn't move from the floor for a long time. Just sat there, palms pressed to the tile, as though the cold would steady her, or numb her, or wake her from something she finally realized she couldn't wake from. Eventually, she spoke again. Quiet, barely audible beneath the thunder. Do you ever regret loving me? I didn't turn. I didn't have to. Every day, I said. But regret isn't the same as undoing. What's the difference? She whispered. Regret wishes, undoing erases. She nodded slowly, eyes distant. And you can't erase me. No, I said. And that's the point. I moved to the sink, rinsed the mug, set it upside down to dry. Every movement measured, controlled. A performance only in the sense that control was the only part of me left that was clean. Her breathing hitched, and when she spoke again, her voice cracked in the middle. I don't know how to live in this. You lived in worse, I said. Her head snapped up. When? When you were lying. She flinched, hard, like the words were a slap. Silence again, not the calm kind, the kind that rattles the bones. Slowly, shakily, she got to her feet. She braced herself on the counter. Her hands were pale, trembling, her nails pressing crescents into the laminate. What do you want from me? She asked again. Always that question. What do you want? What do you need? What should I say? I turned fully to her. Nothing, I said. I want nothing from you. She blinked like I had struck her harder than any shouted insult could have. People expect anger. They can fight anger. They can understand anger. Nothing is worse. Nothing is absence. Nothing is the void where love used to be. She swallowed. Then why are you still here? Because the child didn't ask to be born into your mistakes. She closed her eyes and shook her head. Once, slow, like she finally understood the scale of the thing she broke. I wasn't trying to ruin us, she whispered. No one ever is, I said. But the fire still burns the house whether you meant to drop the match or not. She pressed her hand to her mouth to quiet the sob she didn't want me to hear. I didn't react. Her crying didn't move me anymore. Pain without change is just theater. She wiped her face on her sleeve and forced her breathing to steady. When she spoke again, her voice was small but clearer. What happens now? You live here, I said, until the birth. And after? We see. Her jaw tightened. The fear in her eyes wasn't the frantic kind anymore. It was the slow, cold kind. The kind that creeps in once denial runs out of places to hide. She looked like someone who had woken up underwater. She moved past me toward the hallway. I didn't stop her. I didn't follow. She paused at the stairs. Will you ever love me again? I didn't look at her when I answered. No. The word hung in the air like the last note of a funeral hymn. She inhaled sharp and shallow, then turned and walked up the stairs. The sound of her steps was uneven. Halfway up, she stopped. I heard her hand grip the railing, heard her swallow down another sob. Then the footsteps continued. She closed the bedroom door quietly. Not a slam, not a statement, just a surrender. I exhaled, long and slow. The storm outside finally began to move east, the thunder growing distant. The house settled into itself. The lights flickered once, then returned, humming faintly. The kitchen was the same. The walls were the same. But everything inside them was permanently rearranged. I sat down at the table, not in grief, not in triumph, just acknowledgement. This was the cost. This was what remained. The baby kicked upstairs, faint but real. I heard her gasp softly at the sound of it. Not in horror, in heartbreak. Because love does not vanish just because the person who held it broke something sacred. That is the deeper cruelty of betrayal. The heart doesn't stop just because trust did. I closed my eyes. She was right about one thing. I was trapped too, but not in her. In the memory of the man I used to be. The one who believed home was something you earned through devotion. That loyalty was linear. That love was enough. But love is not enough. Love does not prevent betrayal. Love does not shield from deception. Love does not guarantee reciprocation. Love is only love. The rest is choice. And she chose someone else. The thunder faded farther. The rain slowed to a whisper. The refrigerator hummed again. A car passed outside on the wet street. The world resumed without asking permission. I opened my eyes. I was not angry. Anger would have been easier. I was not grieving. Grief implies something is still being released. I was simply awake, fully, painfully, clearly. She had met the edge of herself tonight, but I had crossed mine long before she ever knew. I stood, turned off the kitchen light. The house dipped back into darkness, lit only by the faint glow of the street lamp outside. As I walked toward the stairs, I paused at the bottom. I did not go up. I went to the guest room. I sat on the bed. I didn't undress, didn't lie down, just sat, listening to the storm leave, listening to the quiet return, listening to the house remember what it held. Eventually, as the clock clicked into morning, I realized something simple. This was no longer a marriage. This was a waiting room, a threshold, a place between what was and what would be. And when the child came, I would step through it, with or without her. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and let sleep come, slow, heavy, and certain. In the half-light of dreaming, one final truth surfaced. We were not rebuilding. We were ending. But the ending was slow, and endings that take their time leave deeper scars. Not the kind you hide, the kind that shape what comes next. The storm had left the house in a state that felt suspended, like every object was holding its breath. The walls seemed thinner, the windows darker. The air itself was waiting for something to happen next, but nothing did. Silence is the loudest aftermath there is. I set the mug down and walked to the sink, ran the tap, watched the water swirl and disappear. There was something grounding in that, something final. The kind of finality that isn't spoken, but understood in the bones. Upstairs, a floorboard creaked. Not frantic, not fearful, just resignation. Resignation has a sound, a weight, like surrender soaked through fabric. When she came back down, she was dressed in a sweater I hadn't seen in months. One of the ones she used to wear when things were still gentle. When mornings meant routine and evenings meant presence instead of absence. The sight of it didn't hurt. It didn't stir anything. It just stood there like a ghost wearing clothes. She lingered in the doorway. What happens now? I didn't answer immediately. I wanted to be careful, not kind, careful. Precision mattered now more than softness. That depends on you, I finally said. She blinked. On me? Yes. On whether you want to survive this, or stay inside the version of yourself that made the mistake. Her throat tightened. I don't know who I am anymore. Good, I said. Now you get to choose. She wrapped her arms around herself, but it wasn't for warmth. It was to hold together the pieces that didn't know how to stay connected anymore. "I keep waiting for you to scream at me," she whispered. "I have screamed," I said, "just not where you could hear it." She nodded once. It landed. She didn't try to defend, didn't try to explain. The part of her that used to fight was tired now, empty. She moved to the table, sat down slowly, hands clasped. "Do you want me to leave?" I took a breath, held it, released it. "Yes," I said, "but not yet." "Why not?" "Because if you leave now, you'll think you ran from consequences instead of walking through them." She looked up. There was a spark of something there. Not hope. Awareness. The beginning of accountability. She lowered her gaze again. "I didn't love him," she said suddenly. It came out cracked, unsteady. "I know." "I don't think I loved you right either," she added. "I know that too." Her lip trembled. "Did you love me?" Once that question would have been a cliff drop, a fracture line, a wound. Now it was simply a fact with edges smoothed by time and pain. "Yes," I said. "I did. And now, I said, "I remember loving you." Her breath caught, soft, broken, but she didn't cry. Tears would have been release. This wasn't a moment of relief. This was comprehension, the kind that comes slowly, painfully, like waking from anesthesia into a body that feels unfamiliar. She rested her forehead on her hands. "I kept thinking you would save me," she whispered. "I did," I said, "for a long time. And now? Now you save yourself, or you don't." A wind moved outside again, brushing the house like a hand passing over a closed door. She exhaled, long and shivering. "I'm scared." "So was I said. "The difference is I walked through it. You tried to escape it." Her shoulders curled inward, shame folding a body into a smaller shape. And still, I didn't feel satisfaction. This wasn't correction by cruelty. This was clarity, a mirror. She lifted her head again. Her voice was barely there. "What do I do?" "You change," I said. "Not for me, not for the story, not for the child. For you. Otherwise everything repeats. Different faces, same damage." She nodded, but not like someone agreeing, more like someone acknowledging the floor under their feet. She stood, slowly, carefully, like she was learning how to move again. "I think," she said, voice thin, "I'll go lie down for a while." "Okay." She walked past me, quiet as snowfall. Her footsteps disappeared into the upstairs hallway, soft and distant, like a memory fading instead of a person leaving the room. I didn't follow. I didn't watch her go. I didn't need to. Some endings don't require witnesses. I poured out the cold coffee and rinsed the mug. My hands were steady, my breath even. The storm in my chest had stilled. But stillness isn't emptiness. It's something sharper. I walked into the living room and sat in the chair by the window. The sky outside was the same dull gray, the kind of sky that makes shadows soft and shapes indistinct. Time stretched, not slow, but quiet, thick, heavy, full. Eventually, I heard her voice again, from upstairs, soft, muffled, not calling for me, just speaking to someone who wasn't there anymore, a name, my name, spoken like a confession, not a request, not a plea, just the sound of acknowledgement. The truth had finally reached her. I didn't move. I didn't answer. There was no need. Forgiveness had already done its work. It had not brought peace. It had brought perspective. And perspective is colder than hate, quieter than love, heavier than grief. It is the knowledge that you can walk away without needing the other person to follow. That is the real ending of a relationship. Not the breakup. Not the argument. Not the confession. The moment you no longer need anything from them. I sat there until the light changed. Evening blurred into dusk. Dusk into night. The house became shadowed and soft and strangely gentle. Not because healing had happened, but because expectation had finally died. I stood, went upstairs, not to her, to the guest room. I lay down fully clothed, no blanket, no pillow adjustment, just gravity, and sleep came easily. Not because I was calm, because I was finished, not with her, not with love, not with the story. Finished with the version of myself that once believed loyalty and sacrifice were the same thing. They aren't. One is a gift. The other is self-erasure. In the darkness before sleep closed everything, a final thought surfaced. She will learn. Or she won't. Either way, I no longer had to carry it. I let the silence stand between us like a third presence. He wanted me to fill it, to argue, to correct, to take bait. I didn't. After a while, he huffed once, a sound halfway to a laugh and halfway to a cough. You think there's some moral high ground, he said, that you're above all this because you stayed calm, because you didn't blow up the way I did. I kept my eyes on the water. There's no high ground, I said. Just ground. He shifted his weight. Pebbles slid under his shoe. Do you know what it's like to have everyone look at you like you're a stain that won't come out? Yes, I said, just not for the same reason. He finally turned his head, studying my face. Maybe he was looking for anger, or triumph, or pity. What he found was steadiness. Not because I'm some kind of saint, because the storm had already emptied me out. He looked back at the lake. She told me about the paternity test. His jaw flexed. Congratulations. The word didn't land like a knife. It just fell, dull. It's not about winning, I said. He swallowed. Everything's about winning. You just don't like the word. Then change the word, I said. Call it surviving. Call it not becoming something you can't live with. He laughed under his breath. I already became that. I let that sit. The wind pushed a small ripple across the surface, turned in on itself, disappeared. He said, I didn't come to fight. I know. I didn't come to apologize either. I know that too. He flinched a little. Do you want me to? No, I said. An apology only works if the person who says it recognizes its cost. You're not there. He breathed out through his nose. You and your costs. They're always paid, I said. The only question is by whom. Another silence. Larger this time. The kind of quiet with room in it. He said, She's telling her mother. I know. Did you send her? No. She asked you to go? Yes. And you didn't? No. Because you wanted her to feel it. Because it's hers to do, I said. You don't heal what you outsource. He was quiet after that. A gull called somewhere out of sight, sharp and lonely. He rubbed his knuckles, maybe remembering the last time rage had borrowed his hands. I lost my job, he said. I heard. I'm selling the house. I figured. I'm leaving town. That's probably best. He nodded like he'd expected the answer and hated it anyway. You think distance fixes what's broken, he said. No. Distance just makes it quieter while you fix it. He swallowed again. I could hear how raw his throat was, how much he'd been talking to himself at night when no one could answer back. I kept replaying the last few months, he said, voice lower. The first text, the first run, the first time I crossed a line I told myself wasn't a line. It always starts small, you know? A joke that lingers a second too long. A compliment you meant to keep inside. A message at 11 p.m. that you label work because turning it into work is the only way you can justify wanting it. His eyes were on the water, but he wasn't seeing it. You don't notice the shift when it happens. You notice when there's nothing left to shift. I didn't give him sympathy. I didn't have it to give. But I didn't give him contempt either. I had less of that than before. He said, Does it make you feel better, knowing the child is yours? No, I said. It makes me feel responsible. That's different. He nodded once. You'll be good at that. I plan to be. He looked down at his hands. I kept waiting to hate you. And? I don't, he said, almost surprised. I want to, but I don't. You didn't take anything that wasn't already leaving me. He was closer to the truth than he realized. I didn't correct him. I didn't claim it either. He drew in a breath that sounded like cold air biting the inside of his lungs. There's one more thing, he said. I need you to hear it. I waited. I didn't love her the way she needed, he said. I loved what it felt like to be wanted by someone who had something to lose. That's a different kind of love. It burns faster. It eats the oxygen. He finally turned to look at me again, eyes clearer than they had been. You loved her the other way, the way that stays. That's why it hurt so much. I didn't answer. The truth doesn't need agreement to stand. He said, when the kid is born, I won't be around. That's good, I said. For you. For the child, I said. He doesn't need 3 narratives fighting to be the loudest voice in his house. He repeated, then blinked like he hadn't meant to ask the question he'd just answered himself. You chose a name? Not yet, he nodded slowly. Don't name him after anybody. I wasn't going to. Good, he said. Let him start without a shadow. We stood there a long time after that. Just 2 men who had been parts of the same story in different ways, watching the same water, feeling the same cold. When he spoke again, his voice was careful. There are people who will keep talking, he said. About you, about her, about me. The town needs something to spin. They can spin it, I said. I'm done listening. He almost smiled. It didn't reach his eyes, but it tried. I'm not asking for anything, he added. I just wanted to face you once without the story running interference. No texts, no witnesses, just the 2 of us and the lake that started it. It didn't start it, I said. We did. He accepted that. It was the only thing in all this he could accept without bleeding. He took a step back. I'm leaving tonight, he said. I won't text again. Good. If I do? You won't, I said. He tucked his hands deeper into his pockets. Not as defense this time, as closure. Take care of him, he said. I will. He turned and walked up the path without looking back. He moved like a man who had lost the map and finally decided to stop pretending he hadn't. I stayed where I was. The wind picked up, flattened the surface, then set it trembling again. A single leaf skated across and sank. My phone buzzed. A message from her. She knows. 2 words. Heavy as a confession, light as relief. Another message followed. She cried. Then she hugged me. Then she asked about the baby. She said she'll help, but she won't lie for me anymore. I told her not to. I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. Not from tears. From the odd, clean fatigue that comes when a tension that has been stretched too tight for too long finally releases. I typed back. Good, she replied. Are you at the lake? I didn't answer that. I didn't need to invite another scene into a place that was already crowded with them. I put the phone back in my pocket and let the cold bite a little deeper. Pain can be sharp or honest. Today, it was honest. I thought about the child again, about the room we hadn't finished, about the penguin I kept in the truck now, not as a memento but as a marker, a small reminder that this story had chapters left to write that didn't belong to anyone but us. Footsteps came from the lot. For a second, I thought he'd changed his mind and come back for a second act. It was Tommy. He lifted a hand. Knew you'd be here. I didn't ask how. My life is readable to the people who have watched me turn into myself. He gone? He asked. Yeah. Good. He stood beside me, hands in his coat, eyes on the same gray. You okay? I'm not broken, I said. I'm not better. I'm just here. That counts, he said. More than people think. We stood a while. the kind of silence only old friends know how to keep. After a bit, he nudged me with his elbow. "Diner?" "In a minute." He didn't move. He knew I meant it. "You know," he said, voice low, "at some point you're going to have to let the house go." "I already did." He nodded. "I mean the idea of it." "I did that too," I said. "At least enough to walk forward." He smiled at the water. "That'll do." We started back toward the lot. The gravel made that soft, grinding sound under our boots. The air smelled like iron and rain. Before we reached the trucks, I turned once more to look at the lake, not to memorize it, not to bless it, to acknowledge the place where the old story loosened its teeth. On the way to the diner, my phone trembled in my pocket again. I didn't look at it until we were parked. A new message, from a number I didn't recognize. "This is Dr. Shu's office. Lillian listed you as emergency contact. Routine checkup today. Everything looks good. She asked us to let you know." I stared at the words for a long second, then nodded once to no one. Tommy watched me. "Good news?" "Good enough," I said. Inside the diner, the bell over the door made that clear, familiar note that has opened 1,000 ordinary hours. People looked up. Some held their gaze a beat too long, some didn't. We took a booth by the window. Coffee came. No questions asked. The waitress refilled without comment. Tommy broke his toast into quarters like he always did. "You going to tell your mom?" he asked. "Yeah." "When?" "When the words are simple enough not to get confused with promises." He chewed, swallowed, wiped crumbs from his fingers. "You think you'll ever love like that again?" I watched the rain start, fine and thin, barely there until it was everywhere. "No," I said, "not like that." I let the truth sit. "But I don't need that kind again." "What do you need?" "A life that doesn't ask me to lie to stay inside it." He raised his cup. "To that." We clinked. The sound was small and real. Later, when the plates were empty and the rain eased, I stepped outside and pulled the penguin from the truck. I held it for a moment, thumb tracing the seam on its stitched smile. I put it back carefully, not ready in the sense of time, ready in the sense of choice. The storm had passed. The sky was still wrong. The town would keep murmuring. But the world doesn't have to be clearer for you to know where you're walking. It just has to be honest. And finally, so was I. He kept his eyes on the lake. "I loved her," he said. "I still do." I let the words settle. "You didn't love her," I said. "You loved the version of yourself you saw in her eyes." He flinched, just slightly. "No," he whispered. "It was real." "If it had been real," I said, "you would have walked away when you realized she wasn't free." He closed his eyes. His breath came out uneven. "I ruined everything," he said. Not a question. A fact. "Yes," I said. He laughed under his breath, a half-choked sound. "You want to hear something?" he asked. I waited. "I don't even think she wanted me," he said. "Not really. I think she wanted to remember who she was when I knew her before life got heavy. I think I was just a doorway she was trying to walk through." I looked at him. Really looked. He wasn't triumphant. He wasn't defiant. He was hollow. "Maybe," I said. "But neither of you looked where the doorway led." He nodded slowly. His jaw trembled, once, the first crack in a long wall. "I can't fix anything now," he said. "No," I said. "You can't." He finally turned to look at me. His eyes were rimmed red, his face pale. "Do you hate me?" I shook my head. "If I hated you," I said, "this would be easy." He swallowed. The lake rippled with a cold wind across the surface. "I need to know something," he whispered. "Is she okay?" I took a breath. "She's breaking," I said. He nodded like that was the answer he expected, or feared, or both. "What about you?" he asked. I smiled, a small, precise thing. "I was broken earlier than she was," I said. The difference is, I didn't pretend I wasn't. He stared at me like he was looking at a cliff he couldn't climb. "What happens now?" he asked. The question he had always been walking toward. I stepped closer, just enough that the space between us closed. Not threatening, not aggressive, just unavoidable. "Now," I said, "you carry the part of her that died when she chose you." His breath hitched. I continued. "And she carries the part of me that died when she did." He closed his eyes. I let the silence stretch, let it build, let it become the only thing he could feel. Then I said the last thing he needed to hear, the only thing that would stay with him. "You don't get to forget any of this." He opened his eyes again, and I saw it. The understanding of a life sentence with no court, no judge, no end. He took a step back. Not fear of me, fear of himself, fear of the knowledge he now had to live with. The wind cut across the lake, sharp and cold. He looked at me as if wanting something, absolution, violence, a final answer. I gave him none. I turned and walked back toward the truck. No haste, no hesitation. Each step deliberate. Behind me, I heard him take a single breath. A long, shuddering inhale that sounded like someone waking up into a world they didn't choose. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. Some things are finished long before you walk away from them. When I reached the truck, I opened the door. The cold metal of the handle felt grounding, real. My phone buzzed. A message. Her. "Where are you?" I stared at the words for a long moment. Then I typed, "Coming home." I didn't add anything else. I didn't need to. I got in the truck and closed the door. The engine turned over. The heater hummed. I put the truck in gear. The lake stayed in the mirror behind me, a flat gray sheet of water that held every version of the people we had been. I drove. The road was wet. The sky was heavy. My hands were steady on the wheel. The house came into view slowly, familiar and unfamiliar at the same time. The porch light was on. She was standing in the doorway, hands wrapped around her stomach, watching the driveway. I pulled in, turned off the engine. The world was very quiet. I stepped out of the truck, closed the door, walked toward her. She didn't move, didn't speak, didn't cry. She just watched me approach, like she was bracing for something she couldn't name. I stopped in front of her, close enough to feel her breath. The air between us felt like something suspended on a wire. "He's done," I said. She nodded. Slowly, she looked exhausted, hollow, haunted. "And me," she whispered. I looked at her, really looked. The woman I had loved, the woman who had broken me, the woman who was now breaking under the weight of herself. The wind blew softly across the porch. The world held still. "You live with it," I said. Her eyes closed, a slow inhale, a tremor through her chest. She opened them again, and there it was. Everything she had done, everything she had lost, everything she would carry now, forever. That was the ending. And I didn't look away.